Can use display flags, flag extraction, but I directly gave margin bottom. Oops. Of course, top, not bottom. Okay, let's create other comments for the design purpose, and let's see. It looks pretty nice. So what about responsive design? As you can see, there is no problem here. But actually, I can decrease this size. At the very beginning, there is no problem, but after the first breakpoint, it's still too big. Let's actually open our page style here. Single page and comments. Okay. Let's quickly create media screen. The biggest screen is going to affect our title, and font size will be 54. Okay. And when it's smaller, it's going to be much smaller. Other breakpoint, let's say 48. And for other one, let's see first. Actually, for other one, I can directly remove this image. So I will say image container and display none. Like that. Perfect. And for here, I can decrease a little bit more. And this is too big also. So let's say title, font size 36, and description 18. Okay, it's still big. Okay, it's description. And of course, p tag. Okay, perfect. And for the comments, as you can see, there is no problem. I don't have to change anything. It looks really nice. Okay. So what about this login page? As you can see, it's acting like it's a single page because we didn't create our login page. Let's close them. Inside app directory, I will say login page. JSX, I will say login page and module. Styles from this login page. Okay. Firstly, I'm going to create another div. It's going to be wrapper. Basically, it's going to be a small box that I will center inside this container. And inside, I'm going to just create 3 divs. And let's say social button. It's going to be Google, GitHub, and what else it can be? Let's say Facebook. And let's give different class names, or we can directly use first child, second and third child, doesn't matter. Let's do it like that. So let's come here and I will say display flags, align item center, justify content center. So our box will be centered. Let's give margin here. Okay. And for the wrapper, I'm going to give a background color. Let's say soft color, soft BG. like that. Of course, we don't have any padding and we can't see it. Let's give 100. For each item, I'm gonna give some gap. Maybe I can increase this padding and give more space for left and right. Okay, and border radius. Let's say 10 pixels. So what about those items? Social button. I will give padding. Border radius will be 5 pixels. Border none. And background color. Actually, I'm gonna give different background color for each one. Let's say color white. And font weight will be bold. And we can click on them. And for the first item, first child, it's gonna be Google button. So background color will be something orange. Let's try this one. Okay, awesome. By the way, I can center my items. Justify content center. Okay, perfect. For this one, it can be black maybe. So actually, let's use nth child. It's gonna be second child. And I will say black. Okay, there is too much space. I'm gonna decrease it, but for now it can stay. I will say Facebook. I mean the third child. Or you can directly use last child. Okay, maybe I can soften this. And okay, it's gonna be, let's say 50. Okay, it looks nice. There is nothing fancy. Let's check the responsiveness. As you can see, the padding is too much. For this point, I can decrease. Media query. Our breakpoint and wrapper will be. What was our padding? Okay, maybe 50 and 100. Perfect. And if I get more, maybe I can decrease this font size and this padding again. So if it's 640, padding will be, let's say 30 pixels. Like that. And I can decrease this font weight and font size. Okay, perfect. And we have one more page to create. If we are logged in, let's open up our authentication link component. And it's gonna be authenticated. And as you can see, there's a right page. So let's create this page. Inside app directory, I will say right. Module.css. By the way, we are creating page, not component. Be careful here. It has to be page. And let's call our style. Module.css. Actually, let's say right page. So it will be easier to find. Okay. So let's see what we have here. As you can see, it's just like medium.com We have an input here that we can add our title and we can write our text here. And the best thing is we can select any text here. And as you can see, we have some options. We can make it bold. We can add here any link. I will enter. As you can see, it's here. Or I can make it bigger. I can add here any code. And here we have a button that we can add any image, external image, or a video. Everything is minimal, everything is pretty clean. And we have a button here that we can publish our post. So let's create this. Inside my container, I will create my input. After that, we are going to have a container that contains this button and this text editor. Let's do that. I will come here and say input. I will give placeholder and it's going to be title. Let's create our editor. We are going to have a button here. Class name will be button. And inside I'm going to have an image. Basically it's going to be this plus image. And after we are going to create one more container that contains those green buttons, and each button has different images inside. Okay. I will say plus PNG. Let's give size. By the way, let's import this. And before creating other buttons, I'm going to create here a use state that because we are not going to see this container at the beginning, we are going to open that container only when we click here. We can open or close. Const open set open use state, and it's going to be false. And I will say if it's open, create here a div, and it's going to be, let's say, add. And inside this, we are going to have 3 buttons. I will say image, external, and video. Let's change their class names. I will say add button because they are going to be green. And after that, finally, we can create our text area. But we are not going to use directly HTML text area. By the way, we are going to make this component a client-side component. And to create this editor to give all these HTML elements, we are going to need a library. It's a great library. Let's open up our terminal. And I will say yarn add React Query. Okay. Let's make this use client. I'm going to add here my library and its CSS file. It's inside our library, but we have to import this. Otherwise, we cannot see its style. And let's use it. After this, I'll say React Quill. I'm going to give here a theme name, and it's going to be bubble. And when we change our text, we should set it somewhere. So I'm going to create one more state, and it's going to be value. At the beginning, it's going to be an empty string. And when we change our text, we are going to update this state. Firstly, let's say value equals value. And on change event will be changing our state. I can give any placeholder here. Tell your story. Let's see. Our text editor is here, but we cannot see it. If you come here and inspect your HTML element, you are going to see that our editor is inside Quell container and editor. So basically we can open our global CSS and edit any of these classes. Let's open up global CSS. And I will say Quell container. Firstly, I'm going to increase its size. And finally, I'm going to change the color of placeholder. To do that, I'm going to say Quell and inside container, Quell editor, Quell blank. Again, I'm not memorizing anything, I'm just inspecting and finding what I need. So don't worry about here. And I'll say before, and I'm gonna change its color. It's gonna be this gray color, just like this. But we couldn't apply here. Let's make this important and perfect. Awesome, it works. So let's give a style for others. Firstly, when I click here, I'm gonna open up my div. Let's close here, and I will say on click event, and set open will be the opposite of open. Just like this. Okay, we are ready to give style. Let me make this bigger. Firstly, I'm gonna make this editor display flags. Gap between that button and our editor will be 20 pixels, and let's give a height. Okay, it looks weird, but we are gonna handle that. We don't have any width right now. Let's give a style for our editor here. I'll say class name styles dot, let's say text area. I can give additional class name, and I will say 100%. Okay, so what about this button? We have a button and add button. Their style will be same, but for those buttons, additionally, I'm gonna give a color. So let's come here and say button, add button. I'm gonna give a size. It's gonna be a circle. Let's delete those background colors, transparent. I'm gonna give border, and it's gonna be 1 pixel, solid, and text color. Let's center our images, just like this. Of course, we can click here, so I will say cursor pointer. And for those buttons, border color will be this green color, just like this. Let's give a style for them. I will say display flags, and gap between items will be 20 pixels. I'm gonna give background color. It's gonna be BG, and its position will be absolute because it's gonna be over our editor. And as you can see, our text is over this div. To prevent this, I'm gonna give Z index, and let's give width, and I'm gonna give left. It's not showing up somewhere here because we didn't give position relative for the parent. And perfect. So what about this input? Did I give class name or not? Okay, let's give styles.input. I will give a really big padding, and font size will be 64 pixels. I'm gonna delete the border and outline, and the background color will be transparent, just like this. So let's change this placeholder. It's gonna be exactly the same color. So I will say input placeholder. Color will be our gray color. And finally, I can create here a button that we can submit our post. I will say publish, and class name will be styles.publish. Let's write it here. Again, it's gonna be absolute positioning. I will say top 30, right 20. Let's give some padding from top and bottom, left and right. And I'm gonna delete the border like that. Let's give a background color. And the text color will be white. And finally, cursor pointer. Okay, I can give border radius. Okay, perfect. Right now we have our pages and components, and we are ready to communicate with the backend API. Our API will be connected to MongoDB. To do that, we are gonna use Prisma ORM. It allows us to create our database schema and make CRUD operations. And the best thing is you can use any database provider like Postgres, MySQL, or whatever you want. Because thanks to Prisma, the syntax is independent of any database. We will send an API request, and the API route is gonna take the request and pass it to Prisma. And it's gonna make the database query, let's say find a post by ID, and it will get the result and send it to our API, and we will get the response. Let's see which tables we are gonna use for this database. I'm gonna paste my schema. As you can see, we will have a user table, and a user can have multiple posts and comments. And in the same way, a post can have multiple comments, but each post has only one category. Of course, you can change here. You can make the relation many to many. So let's create our API route and complete the database connection. Right now, our design is ready. Let's create our API and fetch all this data and add new data using this component. But before that, we should handle our authentication. If we are not authenticated, we won't be able to see this page. Okay, I'm gonna come here and close everything. And let me explain what we are gonna do. So I'm gonna open up the official website of Auth.js, and let's get started. I'm gonna choose OAuth authentication, and here firstly we are going to install our library. I'm going to open up my terminal, yarn add next auth, and after that in the API folder we are going to create this auth folder, and after we are going to create our route. But this page was prepared for Next.js pages, but we are using app router, so instead of this file we are going to create one more folder, and after we will create our route file. Let's open up app folder, and I'm going to create my API. And inside I will say auth. One more folder is going to be next auth. Why we are using it like that? Because we don't have to create all of these endpoints one by one. We are just creating our next auth endpoint just like this, and it handles all these sub endpoints. And inside this folder, let's create our API route. And inside, as you can see, we are going to create our next auth function, and we will add all the providers that we are going to use. In our example, we will use GitHub provider and Google provider. Let's paste this here. And I'm going to add one more, and it's going to be Google provider. Let's import that. Okay, of course you can write all your options here, but I prefer creating another file. Let's open up our utilities. Okay, we didn't create. Let's create. And inside I will say auth.js, and I'm gonna write all these options here. Let's cut this, and I will say export const auth options, like that. And let's import them. Okay, I can call this here, and let's wrap our application with our Nextauth provider. To do that, I'm going to open up my providers folder, new file, and I will say auth provider. Let's create our function. It's going to take a children, just like this, and I'm going to write here session provider, and it's going to come from Nextauth React. Of course, it's a provider. It's going to be use client, and let's use it in our layout somewhere here. Let's import. Okay. And there's something wrong here because we didn't import. Why it's not warning me? There is something wrong with my settings. Okay, anyway. Let's see. I'm gonna open up my login page. And I'm gonna try to log in with Google. To do that, we are gonna need some configuration. I'm gonna open up cloud.google.com. Let's open up console. And in this console, if you don't have any project, just create a new project and after choose APIs and services. And here I'm gonna choose credentials and I'm gonna create a new credential. It's gonna be OAuth. Application type will be web application. You can give any name here. I will say blog app. I'm gonna add my URL, localhost 3000. But remember, when you deploy your application, you have to change this URL. You are gonna see at the end of the video. And here, again, localhost 3000. But I'm gonna write here my endpoint. It's gonna be API, auth, and callback, and Google. Our API route, auth, and as you can see, it handles this endpoint. We didn't have to create here anything. This is why we are using this folder. And I will say create. And as you can see, we have a client ID and client secret. Let's copy them and open up our env file. We don't have yet. Let's create. Let's close this source folder. Make sure that you are creating in your root, not inside source folder. I will say .env. And I'm gonna paste my client ID and let's remember what was the name. Google ID and Google secret. And one more is gonna be secret. And I'm gonna paste here my client secret. So let's open up our login page and see what's gonna happen. I'm gonna come here and say const data and status. I will say use session hook. And let's console log this. Data and status. And when I click on this Google button, on click event, I will say sign in. As you can see, there's a function. It comes from Nextauth React, by the way, equals. And I'm gonna write here my provider name. As you can see, there are many options, but we are gonna be using Google. By the way, we are using use session hook. In this case, our component should be a client component. Use client. I'm gonna open my application and my console. And as you can see, there's a problem here. And it says you should add Nextauth URL to your env file. Let's add that. It's gonna be our local host and the port number. And also I'm gonna add here Nextauth secret. And we are using this secret ID to create session tokens. You can write here any random ID. For now, let's say my secret ID. Of course, you should generate a complex secret, but for now, for the tutorial purpose, it can stay like that. And that's all. By the way, if you are using Next.js route, you should provide here which method you are using. You can use get method, post method, put method, but to take the request, you should provide this first. For the authentication, we are going to be using both get and post methods. So actually, right here, const handler, and I'm going to export this as get method and as post method. Normally, when we create a route, we are taking our requests just like this, export, for example, post method, and we are taking any request, making some operations and returning a response. But in this case, our library is going to handle everything for us. We don't have to create get and post methods one by one. And let's check. I'm going to refresh the page. As you can see, by the way, I forgot deleting this. Let's open up theme toggle and remove that. And as you realize, at the beginning, our data is undefined and the status is loading. And after, as we didn't log in, our data is null, we don't have any user, and the status is unauthenticated. But if I click here and authenticate, I'm going to choose my account here. And as you can see, we have an user here, and it has email, image, and name, and the status is authenticated. Right now, even if I refresh the page, my user will stay. And when I click on this button, we are gonna log out. So let's open up our component. Remember, it's here. And when I click on this button, I'm gonna call sign out function here. Let's try. I will click. As you can see, this is what I want. So what I want to do is using this status and restricting my login page. If I'm authenticated, if there's a user, we shouldn't see this page anymore. So let's close everything and open up login page. And using this status, I'm gonna write here a condition. I'll say if status is, let's use loading first. If it's loading, return loading div, and I'll say just loading. You can give any style for this. And one more, and I will say if it's authenticated, we shouldn't see this page anymore, and we are going to be redirected to home page. To do that, we are going to need use router hook. I will say const router, use router, but it's going to come from navigation because we are not using Next.js pages anymore. And using this router, I'm going to push my user to the home page. As you can see, there is no problem. We can see this page, but if I click here and log in, as you can see, we are in the home page. Okay, perfect. Right now we have user in our client side, but we are not actually storing that user anywhere. Let's create our user in our database using MongoDB and Prisma. To do that, I'm going to open up cloud.mongodb.com and I'm going to create a new database. I'm going to choose the free version. You can choose any provider here and you can choose wherever you want. And the cluster name will be cluster 0. Let's create. Oh, I hate this. Okay, I'm gonna write here any username, llamadev. It's gonna be exactly the same. Create user. And here, when you deploy your application, you should add here your server address. But for now, for the testing purpose, I'm gonna write here 4 zeros, and it means allow anywhere. So we will be able to reach our database from any IP address, but it doesn't mean everyone can read and write any data. They don't know our username and password. Okay, let's finish and close. Let's click on connect. I'm gonna choose drivers and it's gonna be Node.js application. You can install MongoDB and make your CRUD operations using this, but we are gonna be using Prisma. So I will just need this URL. Let's open up our env file. We are hiding all our secrets here. I will say Mongo and it's gonna be this URL. I'm gonna add my password. It's gonna be llamadev and I'm gonna write here any database name. Let's say block. Right now using Prisma and this URL, I'm gonna add my user to my database. Let's open up our documentation. And okay, it's not here. I'm gonna open up the old documentation. Okay, it's here. As you can see, there are many options, but we are gonna be using Prisma. To do that, we are gonna need those libraries. I'm gonna open up my terminal and install them. Of course, yarn add or npm install. And finally, this Prisma. Okay, during this process, let's see what we are gonna need. As you can see, when we create our authentication function, only thing I should do is add here a Prisma adapter. And after that, in the Prisma schema, we should add our models like account, session, user, and token. I recommend you copy and paste this schema directly, that because this adapter is gonna handle our user accounts and tokens automatically. We don't have to do anything. For example, in our application, when I log in with Google and log out and log in with another provider, and if we are using the same email, we don't have to create a new user. This adapter is just creating a new account. As you can see, there's a provider property here, and it stores all our providers here. It's not creating new user. And it handles all these sessions and verification tokens. So let's create our Prisma schema and add them there. I will say yarn add Prisma. And I'm gonna copy here. As you can see, we have a database URL. We are gonna add our MongoDB URL here. Let's initialize our Prisma first. I will say npx prisma init. And I can add here my database provider. I will say data source provider. And it's gonna be MongoDB. Let's open up our menu. And as you can see, we have a new folder here. It automatically creates this folder and this schema. And inside, as you can see, we have our client and database. And we should add our database into this URL. Let's open up our env. As you can see, it just added by itself. I'm just gonna change this URL. Remember, it's here. Let's paste. And I can delete here and this Mongo. Okay. Right now I can paste my code. Okay, we already have our client and DB. I'm just gonna copy and paste here. And as you can see, there's a problem here because we are using MongoDB and it stores IDs with this underscore. If you are using any other database, probably they are just using ID. But if you are using MongoDB, you should use this annotation for your IDs. And we don't need those texts. I'm gonna delete them. But before, let's add them here. And this is our ID in this case. I will say first ID and after map ID. Okay, let's delete those. And that's all. Let's test. I will log out. By the way, it's not changing that because we didn't write our condition. If you remember, we are using this temporary status. Right now, we don't need that. I'm just gonna use session hook. Like that. And it's not authenticated, it's gonna be unauthenticated. And as you can see, our login button is here. But before, let's add our adapter. Let's see here. As you can see, we are gonna need this adapter and we are gonna add our Prisma client. Let's import them. Just like this. And I'm gonna generate my Prisma schema. To do that, I will say npx Prisma generate. If you are using any relational database, you should use npx Prisma migrate. And if you are using MongoDB, you should generate your models first. Let's check. By the way, instead of using this Prisma client again and again, because we are going to make a lot of CRUD operations and we shouldn't create multiple clients, to prevent this, I'm going to be using this code. Basically, if we are in the development mode, it's going to check whether we have created our client before or not. If we have created, it's going to use it. It's the TypeScript version. I'm going to create the JavaScript version. Let's open up our utils. And inside I'll say connect, and I'm gonna paste it here. You can find this code in the GitHub repository. Right now I'm gonna use this Prisma function. Like that. And let's try. I'm gonna refresh. Let's sign in. Okay. Let's check here. I'm gonna refresh the page. And as you can see, we have a database and inside we have account, session, and our user. Name, email, and image. Perfect. As you can see, it uses underscore. And we can use this dashboard, but there's an awesome feature of Prisma. Let's open up new terminal here, npx Prisma Studio. In this address, we are going to have our Prisma Studio. As you can see, let me zoom in. Perfect. So what else we can do? I can do the same thing for writing page. I'm going to open up write page. And paste it here. Of course, they can't be conditional. I'm gonna move this here. And let's import them. Next, navigation and use session. Okay, we don't need data. Right now, I'm gonna close everything here and I'm gonna create my other models. So I'm gonna scroll all the way down and here, firstly, I'm going to create my category model. And it's going to have an ID and it will be a string. I will mark this as ID and by default, I'm going to generate a new ID using this method. It's going to create a unique ID. And remember, if you are using MongoDB, you should add here underscore ID. And each category has a slug. It's going to be a string and unique. Make sure that it's unique because we are going to use it in our posts. And let's say title, string, and we are going to have some images. Actually, it's not required. I can write here question mark, and we are going to have some posts, but we don't have our post model yet. Let's duplicate this, and I will say post model is going to have ID, slug, title, and we are going to have a description. image, and let's say views is going to be an integer, and by default it's going to be 0. And when we visit our post in our browser, we are going to increase this view. And right now we have post, we can add it here, and I will say post array. In this case, I can add my category here. Let's say cat is going to be category, and I'm going to add here a relation, and I'm going to connect my post model and category model. So how I'm going to connect them? Firstly, I'm going to create here a cat slug, and it's going to be a string, and I can check this cat slug and this slug, and if they are equal, it means they are related. So I will say fields is going to be cat slug, and the reference inside this category will be slug. Okay, and right now each category can have different posts, and each post has only one category. And also each post has a user. I will do the same thing here. I will say user email. We are going to use this email because remember, when we log in inside our data, we have our username, email, and the user image. We can directly reach that email using use session hook. This is why we are not using user ID. And I will say user is going to be user relationship. We are going to check the user email, and the reference will be email. And there is a problem here because the foreigner key is not unique. Let's come here. Okay, it's unique, but it's not required. Every user has to have an email, and it has to be unique. Okay, and what else? Let's create our comments. I will say comment. Again, ID, we don't need slug. We are gonna need a title. Actually, let's say description, not title. We don't need any image or views. We don't have any category. We are gonna need a user, and also we are gonna need our post. So I'm gonna duplicate here, and we are gonna check the post slug. Post slug, and it's gonna be slug. Let's check here. Right now I can add my comments. It's gonna be comment array. Okay, there is a problem because I said user is gonna be post. Okay. Each user can have a post list and comment list. And each post can have some comments. And also we can add here created at date because we are going to need it. I will say created at is going to be a date time, and by default it's going to take the current date, just like this. I can do the same thing for post. And I hope everything is okay. If it's not, we can come here and regenerate our items. Let's generate. And I'm gonna restart my Prisma Studio. And let's try to create, for example, our categories. I'm gonna open up my API and create a new folder. And it's gonna be categories. I'm gonna create my route. And I'm gonna try to fetch all my categories. To do that, I will create a get method, export const get. It's gonna be an async function. And I will write here try catch method. If there's an error, I can console log this error, and also I can send it to my user. Return new next response. I will say JSON stringify. I'm gonna send my message here. You can send any object. Something went wrong. And I can send here a status inside an object, and it's gonna be 500, a server error. And let's try to find all of our categories. I will say const categories await prisma dot category. Remember, the name is category. And I will say find many. Basically, it's gonna find all the categories, and finally we can send it to our user. Let me duplicate this and move it here. In this case, it's gonna be successful 200, and I will directly pass my categories that I've fetched here. Okay, by the way, let's import this Prisma. There is something wrong with my VS Code. Okay, let's try. I'm gonna come here and say API categories. As you can see, it's an empty array. Let's open up our studio. I'm gonna refresh here. All our models are here. And let's create our categories. I will add record. Let's try. I'm gonna refresh and it's here. Perfect. Right now, using this endpoint, I can fetch my categories. But before, let's add others. Okay, let's open up our home page. And in this component, by the way, let me zoom out 100%. Okay. Inside this component, I'm gonna fetch my data. Let's open up category list and let's create here our function. I will say const get data is gonna be async, and I will say const response await. I will call the fetch function and my endpoint here API categories, and I can write my options here. And I will say cache, no store. Because by default, Next.js is caching your requests, but I don't want to do that because it's just a tutorial and I want to always show you the fresh data. Of course, they are not changing. In this situation, the better option is using cache. But in case of making any changes for the tutorial, I just want to see it directly. This is why I'm not caching. Okay. And after that, I will say if response is okay. Actually, if it's not okay, I will throw error. Or you can send any message. I will just say failed. If it's not, finally, we can return response and JSON. Let's call this function here. Of course, it should be async. Const data equals await and our function. Let's use this data here. Let's remove them. And I'm gonna leave only one of them. And I'm gonna map through my data. If there is data, take all items and return this link. Like that. And there's a warning because we are using a map. In this case, we should provide here a unique key. And I will say key item.id. But remember, in MongoDB, we are using _id. Let's see. Okay, it's not directly fetching our URL. I will write here. Perfect. As you can see, 6 items. It means it works. Let's use their images and titles. Item.title, item.image. And also I can change here styles, item.slack. Perfect. And I can write here a condition if there's an image, because it's not required, remember, if there's an image. Okay, As you can see, it's that easy, guys. I can do the same thing for these posts. Let's open up. I'm gonna copy here and open up my cart list. And I will paste it here. In this case, it's gonna be posts. And let's call this function here. I will say async const data get data, of course, await. But we don't have our endpoint yet. Let's create inside API. I will say posts. And I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. Let's paste here. Again, get method in this case is gonna be posts. And it's gonna check our post model. But there is something different here, because in our example, we are gonna need this pagination. We are gonna fetch only 4 items. If you are using client components, it's really easy. You can just store a number starting from 1, and when you click a button, you can just increase that state and fetch items. But if you are using server-side rendering, to reach that page number, we are gonna be using search params. For example, at the beginning, we are not gonna have any query here. In this case, the page number will be 1. And when I click on this button, I'm gonna directly create here a page query, and I'm gonna increase that number. It was 1, it's gonna be 2. And if I click here, it's gonna be 1 again. If I click here, it's gonna be 3. Of course, we are gonna check if we have more items or not. We are gonna create all these functionalities, but before, let's take this page query in our home page and pass it to our component. So I'm gonna open up my home page. Where is my home page? I'm gonna close them. Okay, here. And I will say get the search params. And I will create a page here. And I will say if there's a search params and page, take it. If it's not, write it 1. And at the beginning, as I said, we don't have any page. In this case, it's gonna be 1. And of course, it's a string. It should be a number. I will just use parse integer and pass it my string. And right now I can pass my page here, just like that. So let's take these props here. Where is our cart list? Here. And I'm gonna pass this page to my fetching function. I'm gonna take it here and write it as a query. Page equals page. Of course, it should be a backtick. We are using JavaScript here. And inside my route, I'm gonna make some changes. Firstly, I want to decide how many posts I want to show to user. I'll say const post per page. So let's say 2, for example. And right now I'm gonna get my page number. Remember, we are hiding this inside our request. And in this URL, we have our page. Let's get our search params first. Const search params, new URL, and I'm gonna pass here request URL. And inside this search params, we have our page. Const page search params.get and page. Right now we have the page number and post per page. So what I'm gonna do is writing here my option. I will just say take only post per page. It's gonna get only 2 items. Of course, it's an option. And I will say skip post per page multiply by page minus 1. Why I'm doing this? Because at the beginning, remember our page number is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. If I multiply this by post per page, it's gonna be 0. It means we are not gonna skip any post. We are gonna start from 0 and we are gonna take only 2 items. And when we click on that, by the way, it's not working because we didn't complete it yet. But imagine we have a next button here. When I click that, the page number will be 2. In this case, 2 minus 1 is gonna be 1. If I multiply them, it's gonna be 2. And it means we are gonna skip first 2 and we are gonna take 2 items. It works like that. It's really easy. I'm gonna save and let's open up our page. And I'm gonna open up my studio and create some posts for the test purpose. I'll say posts. By the way, it's raining too much. I hope sound is not coming to you. Actually, I can take a break. Okay, I'm taking break and I'll see you soon. Okay guys, I'm back. During this break, I just created some posts. Their titles are from 1 to 6. And I gave some categories. And let's fetch this data. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna show my posts. Okay, using this data, I can call this cart component. Map, if there's a data, map through this data and take items and show a cart. Let's remove others. I should add here a unique key. Remember, item.id, but it's not an HTML element. I should use it inside my cart component. I will take that key and use it here. Okay. And also I'm gonna pass my item equals item, and using this prop I can show item.title. Let's see. I forgot dot here. As you can see, only 2 items. If I click here, I'm gonna update my page. Let's do that. I'm gonna open up my component. What was the name? Pagination. Okay, here. So it's gonna be a client component. Use client. And using useRudder hook, let's say const rudder from next navigation, I'm gonna update my page. But before, I should take this as a prop. Let's open up cart list and I'm gonna paste my page. And if I click here on click event, I'm gonna use my rudder push, and I'm just gonna add here a query, and page will be page plus 1. Let me close this menu, and I can do the same thing for other. When I click, it's gonna be -1. Let's try. I will click. As you can see, we are in the page 2 right now, and we have 3 and 4. If I click more, 5 and 6. But there's a problem here. If I click more, it's going to the 4th page, but we don't have any item. So I have to check if I have previous and next items. If we don't have, I'm gonna disable this. And I will do the same thing for this one. As next. Let's give a style for them. I will say if button is disabled, I'm gonna change its color. It was crimson, but I'm just gonna decrease its opacity, and cursor will be not allowed. But how we are gonna take them? Let's come back and create here as previous and next. I will say const has previous and next, and I'm gonna pass them here. Okay, but how we are gonna make this decision? Firstly, I'm gonna need post per page. You can make this calculation in the API, but doesn't matter. We can do it here also. Remember, it was 2 and I have a page here, and I can say if post per page multiply by page minus 1 bigger than 0. For example, for the first page, 1 minus 1 is gonna be 0. 0 multiplied by whatever is gonna be 0, doesn't matter. And it's not bigger than 0. In this case, it's gonna be disabled. But for this one, we are gonna need the total number of our posts, because we are gonna check if we have more posts or not. So how we are gonna get this count? I can come here and write another operation, and I can say count equals Prisma post and count, but I don't want to do that. I want to make everything in just one request. To do that, I'm going to use transaction method. And inside this method, I can call multiple queries. So firstly, we are going to find our all posts, and secondly, we are going to find the count of those posts. In this case, we are going to have 2 items. First one will be posts and second one will be count. Let's say Prisma post find many, and second one will be count. Of course, we don't need post here. It's going to be transaction, and it's not going to be an object. It's going to be an array. Just like this. But we don't have our query here. Let's create const query. And remember, we are taking 2 items and skipping this amount of items. Let's use it here. Okay. Right now I can send my posts and also this count. Let's use it here. Right now we don't have only posts. We have posts and also count. In this case, this data will be posts. And right now I can write my condition. I will say post per page, again multiply by page minus 1 and plus post per page. And I'm gonna check if it's smaller than count or not. If it means we have more items. If not, we are gonna disable that button. Let's calculate. At the beginning, we have 6 items and our page number is 1. In this case, this expression will be 0, plus 2 will be 2, and 2 is smaller than 6. In this case, it's going to be true. Let's see. I'm going to come here. As you can see, our cursor has changed, but background color, there is something wrong there. I'm going to open up my CSS. Oh, I said border is going to be background. Okay. If I click here, right now, as you can see, we have previous. Perfect. And in this case, we can't click here anymore, but we can come back. It's that easy. Right now, we are going to make something different. If you remember, we have blog pages and we can search for any category here. For example, if I click, it's going to open up this page. And again, we are going to pass our page here, page number. And also we are going to pass this category. Let's do that. Let's close everything here and open up blog page. I'm going to take the search params. And again, I'm going to create page, parse integer, search params dot page. If it doesn't exist, it's going to be 1. And I'm going to search for one more thing, and it's going to be my category. Let's actually destructure this like that. And right now I can pass them to my cart list. By the way, I can change here, cat block, and I can capitalize this. Let's open up title and I will say text transform capitalize. That's all. And as you can see, we have items, but we are not fetching based on this category. Let's handle that. I'm going to open up my cart list again. and I'm gonna take category, but it's not required. In the home page, we are not gonna have any category, but for this page, we are gonna pass it. In this case, I can pass it to my API request, and I will say, and category equals category. But if it doesn't exist, it's gonna be empty. Or you can do the same thing here. If it doesn't exist, you can say empty string. Right now, I'm gonna take this category in my API route. Remember, we have page here. I will do the same thing for category. And I'm gonna add here a condition. And it's gonna be where, and I will say if there's a category, cat slug will be this category. Because remember, in our schema, post has a category slug. We are gonna fetch all these posts if they belong to this category. I'm writing this condition because if I directly say cat slug equals category, it's gonna give an error because remember, it's not required. We are calling this only in this page. This is why I'm using it like that. And I should use this query here also, but remember, we are counting our posts. So I'm just gonna need this part. Otherwise, it's gonna take only 2 items. In this case, it's gonna give us 2 all the time. I don't wanna do that. So I will say where, and I'm gonna take only this part of this query. So I will say query.where. Let's check. As you can see, there is only 1 item. By the way, we didn't change here. Let's open up our cart. We changed only this title. I will copy this and change here. Item dot created at. But if I say this, as you can see, it shows the full date. I'm just gonna take these first 10 items. To do that, I'm gonna use substring method. Start from 0 and take first 10 items. Okay, let's change here. Item dot cat slug. If I say food, for example, it's gonna fetch this data, 4th item. And it's awesome because it's really important for SEO. When search engines visit this page, they are gonna see this server-side rendered page. And it's the same thing for our pages. They can index those pages, page 1, page 2. And if you have any blog page or e-commerce page, you are gonna see that how useful they are. And what else? Let's take care of single posts. When I click here, it's gonna open up the single page. I'm gonna close here. Block. We have Slack here, but we don't have posts. Actually, let's create posts page. It's gonna be easier. I'm gonna move this Slack here. And by the way, let's continue changing them. I will say item.image. And of course, if there's an image, because it's not required. And this description. I can do the same thing here because description will be really long. I'm gonna use substring. And I'm gonna take, let's say, first 60 items. And when I click here, finally, we are gonna open up post page and item.slug. And I will do the same thing for this title. Where is our title? Here. Okay. As you can see, we don't have any image. Actually, instead of this image, I can write my condition here. So it's not gonna show this container. Perfect. And when I click here, it's gonna show up our post page. Right now, let's create our endpoint for this single page and fetch our item. Let's close everything. Inside API, posts, I will copy this and create my Slack and paste. And I will say get single post. In this case, we can take our params here. We don't need search params, any of them. Let's remove all of these. And I'm gonna take my Slack first. I will say const Slack is gonna come from params. Remember, we are using this Slack here. This is how we can reach it. And using this Slack, I'm gonna search my post. I will say const post await prisma.post, and I will say find unique, and I will write here my condition where Slack will be our Slack. So if you are using the same name, you don't have to write it like that. You can keep it like this, and I'm gonna pass this post here, and let's fetch our item. I'm gonna come here. Let's close here, and I'm gonna make this async function, and I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. Let's copy here and paste, get data. We are gonna need our Slack, and we are gonna take this using params. Const Slack equals params, and using this Slack we can call our function get data and Slack. And using this Slack, we can make API request. And I'm gonna pass this Slack here, of course, like that. And it's gonna return us a data. And using this data, let's write our title. Image. First, I'm gonna write my condition. If there's an image, show it here. And we are going to handle here later. And if you remember, we have a description container here, and it includes any HTML element. It can be p tag, h1 tag, whatever. So what I'm going to do is, instead of writing here data.description, I'm going to self-close this div, and I'm going to add dangerously sad inner HTML. Because remember, in our example, we are using this editor, so we can pass any paragraphs or bold items or h1 tag or whatever. To show them here, we are gonna need this item. I will say underscore HTML data.description. Of course, you can use here any library to make this operation more secure, but for now I'm gonna leave it like that. But after, we are gonna need a library. Basically that can be only p tag, header tag, something related to text, nothing else. Okay, and I will save, and it's here, but this image is still here. There's something wrong. Oh, it's a user image. I'm sorry, it's gonna be this image. If data.image exists, just like this. Okay, but what about this user? When we fetch this post, should we fetch also this user and pass it here? You don't have to do that. It's really easy to handle. I'm just gonna come here and just say include user true. I can do this because in our model, we have user inside post. There is a relationship between them. So I can easily take my post with their user. In this case, I can update my user easily. Let's come here and I will just say item, user, and username. Oops, not item, data. As you can see, it's here. and I can change my image. It was here, remember, and I will say if user image exists. Okay, it's not here. Let's see our users. Okay, it's image. And right now there's a problem because Next.js doesn't allow us to use this URL. It's an external URL. To prevent this, I will basically copy this URL and open up my settings, next config, and right here my option is going to be images, domains, and I will add my domain here. If you make any changes in this config file, you should restart your application. As you can see, it's not working anymore. I will refresh. Okay, it's because of this subdomain. And perfect. I should check for this. Can I use it like that or not? I'm not sure. I'm just gonna leave it like that. And right now we can fetch our comments and add a new comment. Let's create our endpoint quickly. I will copy this and create new endpoint. It's gonna be comments. And I'm gonna paste it here. Get all comments of a post. We don't need params, but we are gonna need our post ID because we are gonna fetch all these comments using this post Slack. So let's create search params. New URL, request.url. And I will say const post Slack. It's gonna be, let's say, post Slack again. Basically, we are gonna pass this Slack as a query and we are gonna take it and search for our comments. I will say comment, find many, where, and inside I'm gonna write my condition. Remember how we are doing this. If there is a post Slack, just use it. And again, we are gonna take the user. And finally, we are gonna send these comments. Like this. Remember, in our schema, we have post Slack. We are gonna search for it. I will close here. Okay. Let's do that. I'm gonna close them and open up my comments component. I'm gonna make here something different because it's gonna be a client-side component. Use client. We don't need here SEO or something. And when we add new comment, we are gonna see it here immediately. So basically, I'm gonna fetch my items on the client side. To do that, you can use useEffect, but I recommend you to use React Query or SWR. I really love SWR. It's really easy to use and it's really lightweight. I will say yarn add SWR. And let's call this hook. I will say import use SWR from SWR. Okay. As you can see, there is a temporary status here. Instead of this, I can use session hook. This is another reason why we are using useClient, because if we are not logged in, we are not going to see this input. And after, I'm going to fetch my data. Const data and is loading. Use SWR. And here, I'm going to write my endpoint. API comments, and remember we have to pass here post Slack And we are gonna take this as a prop. Like that. Let's open up our single post page here. And I'm gonna pass this slug to my comments. Okay. And we should write here any fetching method. You can use Axios, you can use JavaScript fetch. So let's define this here. I will say const fetcher is gonna be an async function. Const response await. I'm just gonna directly use fetch method and I'm gonna pass my URL here. And after I'm gonna get my data await response.json. And I will say if response is not okay, throw an error, and I'm gonna show my message. So I will say const error. Remember, we are sending a message here. I can take it and throw that error. Data.message and just throw this. And finally, return data. So I can use this fetcher here. By the way, I didn't close this backtick. Okay, let's use it here. We have many comments. I'm just gonna delete all of them. It's gonna be only one of them. I'll say if it's loading, right here, loading. If it's not, map through this data. And show this comment. Of course, we don't have unique key. It's gonna be item ID. Let's use this item here. If you remember, we are fetching this with our user, item.user.name, created at, and description. And user image. And as you can see, we don't have any comment yet. Let's create. We are using this post. I'm gonna come here, open up comments, add record, first comment, and I'm gonna choose a user here. We have only one user, and I'm gonna choose my post 5, this one. Let's save. I'm gonna refresh. Okay, there's something wrong. We couldn't pass this slug, I think. In our single page, we have post slug. We are passing this here and taking that slug. Okay, it's gonna be post slug. Okay, inside our API, we can't get this post slug. It's undefined. Let's check this. Okay, it's 5, but by the way, SWR trying to refetch this, that's because there's an error. This is the other benefit of using SWR. Okay, we are sending our post slug, but let's console log this. I'm gonna comment this out because it's really long. I will refresh. Oh, because of this capital letter, I think. Oh, it was because of this P. I'm so sorry. I wasted your time. And okay, cool, it works. If I check other page, as you can see, it's empty. By the way, there is something wrong here. We are logged in, but we can't see our input here. Authenticated. It should be, of course, this structured. I can delete this. Okay, right now I'm gonna store my text here, and when I click here, I'm gonna create a new comment and I'm gonna show it here immediately. Let's create our endpoint. I will create one more, and I will say create a comment. It's gonna be a post method. And firstly, I have to verify my user. Of course, we are hiding this, but someone can use our API. We cannot trust users. We have to verify them on the server side. So basically, I'm gonna need the user session here. If you are using NextAuth, it's really easy. If you remember, we have an option here. And also I can export one more thing, and it's gonna be server-side sessions. Let's say get auth session, get server session function, as you can see here, and I'm gonna pass here my options, auth options. So I can use this function and I can reach to my user. So firstly, I will say const session. Let's import this, and I will say if there is no user, I mean if there is no session, we are not allowed to create new comment. In this case, we are going to return an error, and it's going to be 401. Not authenticated. If there is a session, it means we are authenticated. In this case, we can take our body and create a new comment. Let's do that. I will delete this, and I will say const body await request and JSON. And after that, I will say comment Prisma comment and create. Let's delete this, and I'm gonna pass here my data. I can directly say body, but I'm gonna add some additional information. So I will say take everything inside this body, but additionally add here user email. And we are gonna take it from our session. As you can see, we are not taking our user from client side. We are doing everything in the backend, and our application is really secure right now. I will save, and let's use it here. Firstly, I'm gonna store my description. Let's write it here, const description, set description, use state hook. At the beginning, it's gonna be empty. And when I change here, on change event, it's gonna set my state. Event, target, and value. Let me close this sidebar. Okay. And finally, when I click on this button, I'm gonna call handle submit, const handle submit. It's gonna be async function. We are gonna make a request, and I will say await fetch API comments, and I'm gonna write here my method. It's gonna be a post method. And inside body, I'm gonna send my description. To do that, I will say JSON stringify, and I will pass my description. But I'm gonna pass one more thing. So let's say description and also post Slack. because when we create any comment, we have to pass this post slug. Okay, this is the single page. I will close this. And finally, when we add our new comment, I want to see it here. To do that, we are gonna revalidate this data. It's really easy. I will just come here and say mutate. And after the successful operation, I'm gonna call this function. Let's see. I hope everything is okay. I will say second send. If I refresh the page. Okay, let's open up this error and let's see what's going on. Oh, there is something wrong here. Oh, I forgot here await. It's an async function. Let's try again. And it's here. Okay, perfect. So what else? We have only writing function. By the way, it redirects me to the home page. There is something wrong. Let me close everything and open up write page. Oh, I said authenticated. It's gonna be unauthenticated. Okay. Right now, I'm gonna store my title, this text, and also my file. So let's create some use states. So firstly, I'm gonna create my endpoint. I will do exactly the same thing. I can copy this and paste for my post. I will say create a post. Again, I'm gonna check my session. If it doesn't exist, we are gonna return this error. And I will say post. And here, we are gonna take body, user email again, and that's all. Let's use it here. Firstly, I'm gonna store my items. Of course, it can't be conditional, so I'm gonna move it here. Firstly, I will say file, set file, use state. At the beginning, it's gonna be null. Basically, when we add here any item, I'm gonna update this file. For these items, I'm gonna create an input and its type will be file. And I will give an ID, let's say file or image. And I will say on change event. And I'm gonna set my file. Event target files, but I'm gonna take only one file. Single file is gonna be the first item. Like that, but I don't wanna see this input. Instead, I'm gonna make this a label, and when I click here, it's gonna automatically choose this file input. To do that, I will say inner style, and let's say display none. Okay, it's not here anymore. And I'm gonna create here a label. And HTML4 will be our input ID, which is image. Actually, let's move this here. When I click, as you can see, it's opening file. If I choose any icon here, it's gonna update my state. And I will create here a use effect, and I will basically say if file changes, directly upload it to Firestore. To do that, I'm gonna open up firebase.google.com. You can add here a new project. Let's write blog. I don't need any analytics. is going to create our project, and we are going to use the Firebase storage. You can use any other uploading service, but in this project, I just preferred using Firebase. And using Firebase doesn't mean we are going to use Firebase database or any other thing. It's a huge platform that has a storage service, database service, so we are just using storage. Okay, I'm going to come here, let's say block again, and let's install Firebase. And add Firebase. Let's initialize our application. Inside utils, I will say Firebase and paste it here. Of course, we can hide our API key. Let's say process env and Firebase. Okay. Let me close this, and using this app, we can use our storage. Let's come here, build. As you can see, many services. We are just going to use storage. It's going to be test mode. You can choose any location. By the way, let me close everything here. I've opened too many tabs. I hope it didn't affect my recording. Let me close here. And let's create our use effect. I will say if file changes, call this function const upload. And we are going to upload our file here. And I will say if file, call this function. Because at the beginning it's going to be null. It's not going to fire this function. If we choose any file, it's going to run this upload function. Let's see how we can do this. I just opened documentation, and here there is an awesome example that includes everything we need here. As you can see, we can upload our file and we can listen its status. We can show to user our progress. If we cancel, we can show it to user. It's really useful. Of course, I'm not going to use all these features. I'm just going to upload my image and take the URL. Let's copy this. And paste here. I'm going to import them. And I'm going to initialize my storage. Let's do it somewhere here. And if you remember, we created our application. Where is our Firebase? Here. Okay, I didn't export. I can use this app. Perfect. And I'm gonna delete those comments. As you can see, we are using our storage, and here we are passing any file name. In our case, we can directly use our file.name, but if we do this, and if we try to upload exactly the same image, it's gonna have the same name. To prevent this, it should be unique. I generally prefer creating here a new date. Let's say const name or unique name. I will say new date, get time. It's gonna give us a timestamp, and finally file.name. I can use it here. And if everything is okay, it's gonna give us the download URL. We can use it and update our state. Let's create one more state. Let's say media, set media. At the beginning, it's gonna be an empty string. And we have our image, we have our description, and we are gonna have our title. Okay, we already set this description. Remember, we are using this library and it's changing our value. And also I can change my title on change event, set title. And finally, when we upload this image, I'm gonna set my media download URL. And after that, finally, when I click on this button, we are gonna publish our post. On click, handle submit. It's gonna be async const response await fetch method. I will say API posts, and the method will be post, and inside body I will say JSON stringify. I'm gonna pass my title. I'm gonna pass my description, but remember, it's value. I'm gonna send my image, and it's media. And also I'm gonna need a slug, and I can actually transform this title into a slug. To do that, I'm gonna create here a function, and I'm gonna use some regular expression. Basically, if we have a title like LlamaDev, it's gonna transform this to something like that. And this is gonna be our slug. So let's use our title here. And let's see, I will say console log response. I will say, by the way, its color is black. There is our input here. I will say color, text color. Okay. Description, I can choose any image. Let's choose this one. And if I submit, okay, there is a problem. Let's open up our console and let's see what's going on. Okay, our session is not defined. Let's come here and import this. There's something wrong with my ESLint. It's not showing my errors. Okay, publish 200, but it says there's an error. Oh, category is missing. I forgot adding here category. How can I add this without destroying my design? Maybe somewhere here. Anyway, I'm just gonna create here an input, and after this tutorial, I'm gonna change it and you can find it in the GitHub repository. I really forgot that, I'm so sorry, and I don't wanna make any design right now. So after this, I can say input, placeholder, category. Of course, we should fetch our categories and create here a select, because I can give here any random category. It shouldn't be like that. But as I said, I just forgot. It can be like that for now. Or actually, I can say to do add category. I'm gonna make this later, but for now, temporary, I will just say travel, for example. Let's publish. And this time it says user is missing. We have user email. We are using user email. Let's check. Post. Okay, user email. Let's actually check our Prisma Studio. I'm gonna start this again. Let's open up post. Okay, it's not here. Let's actually delete this folder and restart our application. I'm gonna refresh here. Let's select this image, title, description, and publish. And again, user is missing. Why is that? Okay, user is here. Our image. Okay guys, it was not about the user, it was about this cat slug. By mistake, I added here cat. It's gonna be cat slug. And also, I forgot these function brackets. Right now, it's working as we expected. Let's write here any title. I'm gonna choose any image here. If you open your console, you're gonna see that your image is being uploaded. And I can write here any description. If I publish, you are gonna see that your item is here. As you can see, title, and this is our slug, description, and image. Of course, I should add this domain also, otherwise it's gonna give us an error. Let's say posts and title. As you can see, I'm gonna add this URL. Just like that. Let's refresh. Of course, if you are making any change here, you should restart your application. And that's all. I can add any comment. I can see my item. By the way, when you visit this page, you can increase your post view. Remember, we created here, where is our post? Here, we have views, and at the beginning it's 0, and when we visit this page, we can increase that number. Let's open up our endpoint here. If you remember, we are directly fetching this item, and instead I'm gonna update my item and I'm gonna add here my data. So I'm gonna change views. And I will write here increment 1. So whenever I visit this page, it's gonna update this post and it's gonna increment this property. Let's save and see. I will refresh. As you can see, it's still fetching the data. But if we check our post here, I'm gonna refresh. You are gonna see that the views is 1. Again. And 2. It's that easy. So what you can do here, if you remember, we have a component here that we show the most popular blog posts. You can open that component. You can do as we always do, just fetch posts using getData function and write here another query, just like popular true. Or if you are using something else, for example, there is another data here, editor's pick. What you can do, you can open up your schema and add here editor pick or is featured, whatever you want. But I think you understood how to create endpoints, how to fetch data. I'm not gonna do exactly the same thing again and again. And that's all. So right now we can deploy our application. I'm gonna open up my Hostinger panel. And if you remember, I created a server at the beginning of the video. And right now I'm gonna create my application. To do that, I'm gonna click on panel access. And this is my login URL. It's gonna be admin and my password. And as you can see, in this server, we don't have any website. Let me zoom in. I'm gonna add a website. As you can see, there are many options, but in our project, we are using Node.js. So I'm gonna choose this one. If you have any domain, you can add it here. In my case, I'm gonna be using test.llama.dev. And our Node.js application is gonna run on this port. And let's create. And it's ready. I will click here. You can see your configurations. And here, I'm gonna install a free SSL certificate. To do that, I'm gonna click here. Let's encrypt certificate. Make sure that you add your IP address as a DNS record. And after that, you are gonna be ready to install. And that's all. If you are using Cloud Panel, everything is easier. So I'm gonna open up my code and my terminal, and I'm gonna build my application. But there's a problem here. Let me show you. I will say yarn build. As you can see, inside right page, we have a problem. And the source of this problem is React Query. Because in Next.js, all components are server-side components by default. Even if we write here use client, at the beginning, it's a server-side component. And during this transformation, we can encounter some problems. If you remember, we had the same problem when we used local storage. So how we are gonna fix this? I'm gonna remove this from here. Instead, I'm gonna import my library dynamically. So let's write it somewhere here. I will use dynamic import and I will say SSR false. Let's save and try. And right now, as you can see, there is no problem. We are ready to deploy our application. To do that, you can directly connect to your server and upload your files using Git. But we are using this panel. We can use it directly. I'm gonna come here, File Manager. I'm gonna find my domain name. And this is the main folder of my application. I can upload my files here. Let's open up our folder and I'm gonna choose everything. You don't have to use Git, Next.js, or even Node modules because we are gonna build our application inside our server. I'm gonna come here and say compress, and I'm gonna take this file, drag and drop into my server. Let's open up this file. I'll say extract. I'm gonna choose the main folder. Okay, they are here. Right now, I'm gonna connect to my server and build my application. Let's get back to the H panel. Let's open up Settings and here SSH keys. I'm gonna open up my terminal and create an SSH key. I'm gonna save it here. You can give any password. And it's ready. To copy our key, I'm gonna use this command. By the way, you can find all these commands in the description below. You don't have to memorize anything. And I'm gonna take this key and paste inside my SSH keys. Let's say llama dev and paste here. It's gonna take a while, just 20 seconds or something like that. And after that, we are ready to connect our server. Okay, it's ready. Let's come back here. And we can connect to our server using this command. I will say yes, enter my password. And it's ready. If you remember, we have created our application here. And the username is llama test. I'm gonna come here and say sudo su llama test. Right now I'm inside my application. Let's find out htdocs. Let's see what's inside. As you can see, this is our website. Let's get inside. And let's see. Okay, our files are here. Right now, I'm gonna install my libraries. And I'm gonna activate the production mode and I will say npm run build. Okay, let's start our application. npm start. And let's visit our website. And as you can see, our application is here. It works as we expected because remember, in MongoDB, we didn't add any specific IP address. This is how we can fetch data. You can basically open up MongoDB and add your IP address. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna change here. And the IP will be my server IP. In this case, only my server will be able to access this data. And also you should go ahead and change your authentication provider URLs. If you remember, we are using Google Cloud and GitHub authentication. You should go there and change the website address. And what else? If you quit this terminal, you won't be able to reach your application anymore. To prevent this, we are going to be using PM2. Let's say npm install PM2 latest, and I'm going to install globally. Basically, it allows us to start our applications automatically. Even if we restart our server, it's gonna run. To do that, I will say pm2 start npm. You can give here any name. I will say next app and start. I will say pm2 save, and that's all. Let's see. As you can see, it's still working, and it allows us to fetch our data. Perfect. Okay, that's all guys. I hope you liked it. If you learned something new today, please like the video. You can support LlamaDev by joining the channel or using the link in the description below. Don't forget to follow LlamaDev's social media accounts. I hope I'll see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.